தமிழ் நெஞ்சங்களுக்கு அன்பு கலந்த வணக்கங்கள். இன்று நம் தந்தி டிவி ஸ்டுடியோவுக்கு வந்திருப்பவர், புதுச்சேரி மக்களின் இதயங்களை கொள்ளையடித்த இஷா சிங் ஐபிஎஸ் அவர்கள். புதுச்சேரின்னு மட்டும் சொல்லக்கூடாது, தமிழ்நாடும் சேர்த்து தான். மேம் வணக்கம்.
வணக்கம்.
உங்களை உங்களை தந்தி டிவிக்கு அன்புடன் வரவேற்கிறோம். மக்களுக்கு எல்லாருக்கும் ஒரு சந்தேகம், இஷா சிங் மேம் தமிழில் பேசுவாங்களா அப்படின்னு சொல்லிட்டு.
நன்றி. Kunjum Kunjum, I understand Tamil little bit. I started learning, in fact, after coming to Puducherry. I never thought that I would ever need the language. Mostly in our cadre, we speak in Hindi and English. But after coming to Puducherry, I understood that if you have to understand the people and this land, you have to know the language a little. Incidentally, I chose to learn the script so I can read Tamil little bit. And I can identify the alphabets, but spoken language, little more time it'll take. I have a very nice professor from Bharti Dasan College in Puducherry, Dr. Chandra. So she's helping me, and I hope to continue these classes. And maybe next time I'll be fluent.
Very nice, ma'am. Looking forward to
Yes,
meeting you the
absolutely.
next time.
It's a deal.
Ma'am, what important lessons did you learn from your parents? Did they spend enough time with you? Your father was an IPS officer as well, and your mother was a central government employee as well.
When you ask the child of two government servants, did your parents spend enough time with you? I think the universal answer to that is no.
Okay.
Because people always talk about, the perks of government service, XYZ. But I think the truth is it's a lot of effort and there's a lot of time and energy that goes into public service because you're dealing with the public. So there's never any rest time, predictable hours. So my parents actually spent a lot of time at work while growing up. I was raised in a creche. But one thing is that sometimes in my parents' office, like if they had if my father was posted in the battalion, then he would take me and he would say, sit here and study or go play. So same thing, my mother would take me to her office sometimes. So I've actually been raised in government offices as well. One thing is there though, my parents definitely spent quality time in terms of they taught us to put our values above everything else. So no matter how busy they were, they always took out enough time to make sure that we had a very values-based upbringing.
Oh, very nice. What was your childhood dream? Who was your role model back then?
So I think a lot of girls can relate to this. Your father's always your first role model. I obviously adore my mother, and I think as I grow older, I aspire to be like her as well. But from a very young age, I saw my father being very courageous in the service. And I remember eventually he traded the IPS uniform for the black coat, which is to become a lawyer. But I was around 7 years and I was very upset because I grew into the uniform. It was very important for me to hold on to it, I think. And I always felt like I would want to come back to the IPS. So there are actually interviews of me telling some news reporters that I will go back into the IPS.
Okay. And you did exactly the reverse. You traded the black robe for khaki. So tell us about your lawyer days.
I love my lawyer days. Honestly, I look back on them so fondly and I miss them also many a times. And the reason is because law is so much about justice and there's so much justice that you can do as a lawyer. And I really enjoyed doing that. And I think you can uphold people's rights and show people what their worth is. And I think that's really important, right? Like people need to know what their worth is in life. And I think law really helps you do that. So be it through, I was always interested in human rights. I went to National Law School, Bangalore. And in my third year itself, I had a corporate offer with a really high paying package. But for me, I was really clear that I want to work in public service and human rights. So I turned that offer down and then I switched to law. And from law, I wrote the exam to fulfill my childhood dream. And here I am.
And you fought for the common man. We read in the newspapers that there was a commendable judgment after your fierce arguments, which ensured justice for the family of the deceased manual scavengers. Tell us more about that.
So, the case was a very interesting chance encounter. I call it chance encounter because we were just going through the newspapers at home and we often discuss, this is good, this is bad, this is what needs to change. And we kept seeing, I was just fresh out of law school and I had joined litigation. And we had said, we really believe that change begins with us. So we never look to another to say, you make the change. It's always like, what can I do? So in the paper, we read about these three widows who had lost their husbands, who had died while cleaning a septic tank. So uh, we ended up tracing them. We got in touch with that journalist. We went to the slums where they were living, and they were very horrific conditions. And when we started researching more into the issue, we realized that manual scavenging continues to remain an entirely unaddressed issue because, for instance, back then, nobody had been paid compensation. In spite of the law being so clear, in spite of so much of funding that exists for these people, for in general compensation purposes, somehow because these people could never reach the right avenues, they were so poor that if their husband dies, the only thing they can think of is, where is my next meal going to come from? So let me now get out of my house and get a job. My child is going to drop out from school and college and help me earn some money. So in that mindset, how can you go to court and say, this really unjust thing happened to me? So we went to them. They were a little skeptical because we just showed up at their doorstep, but we somehow managed to convince these widows. None of them were educated. And we said, allow us to represent your case pro bono in court. And somehow they kept their faith in us. And as they kept their faith in us, I also saw their transformation, right? So, from like one widow was a lady from Rajasthan, and she had never taken the parda off her head before this case happened. There was another one who had come all the way from West Bengal. She was my age with two children, and one child was 4 weeks old. And the father thought, if I clean the septic tank, I'll earn a little more money and have a small birthday celebration for my son. So these were the thoughts with which those men went into the septic tank. And these women did not know what to do. But slowly over the 2 years that we fought this case, and it was pretty difficult to navigate because social justice, pro bono, sometimes takes a back seat when there are other matters. But we kept pushing, and these women then started coming to court. So in the final arguments, I still remember the three of them were sitting, and there was a lot of opposition that we had to face during the arguments. And all I said is, my lords, the three ladies are here in court. You can see their condition. There's nothing more that needs to be said. And the bench was a really compassionate one, and they passed a very landmark order. Granting not just them compensation, but they ordered that in all cases of deaths in Maharashtra, compensation should be paid. So it was the first time the court did that in Maharashtra. I do want to say one thing. While the case was going on, it was COVID and the widows struggled a lot. And one of them used to call me up and she said, this system doesn't work for people like us. And that really stayed with me. And I wanted to show her how the system can and will work for them as well. So when the order was passed, they didn't understand much, but they understood something good has happened because the court took a long time in passing that order. And finally, somebody must have told them that you got your compensation. They came out of the courtroom and they were crying, crying, crying. And one of the ladies said, आज in Hindi she said, आज हमने देख लिया अगर वकील चाहे तो कुछ भी हो सकता है. Today we have seen that if a lawyer wishes, anything is possible. And I remember telling her, no, if you wish, then anything is possible. So I think for me that was also a big learning lesson, that sometimes justice might be a little delayed, but it should never be denied if we persevere.
That's awesome, man. What made you to trade the black robe for khaki?
That is a really tough question. And I say that because I really, really thoroughly enjoyed my time in the Bombay High Court. But Government, I always say, is the largest NGO out there. You know, we work with the people of this country, we work for the people of this country. And I've noticed that in any chair that you sit, in any position of leadership or any position you hold in the government, if you just sit there and do your duty truly, honestly, with dedication, integrity, and courage, you make a huge change. A huge change. And I don't think we acknowledge it as much as we should, as in the transformative power of government service. But in my short career, I've seen you can do a lot of justice and a lot of good just by being in government service and doing that duty honestly. That's probably the reason I felt like the platform I could serve a lot more people.
Tell us about the UPSC preparation, Ms. Isha. You cleared in your second attempt, right?
Yeah. So UPSC, I decided to write along with my litigation. I got lucky because there was COVID going on. I still feel like I could have done better. That's why I usually uh, prefer to, the thing is, what I feel is that it's important to persist. And one should have faith in oneself. I think that's really important. If one has faith in themselves, then I don't think anything is impossible. So, but for me, since I always thought that I would come back to the same position that my father left, so it's been a really remarkable journey, and I'm very grateful for it.
Did you enjoy your IPS training days?
You can only enjoy something when you are aware of it, but IPS training is so demanding. I think not enough is talked about it, that all you think is, how do I get through this?
Okay.
They really push you. So imagine, I come from a legal background. I'm used to studying, reading, writing, speaking, and suddenly you're, doing the hardest route marches and longest runs and treks and very challenging environments, sleep deprivation. Because at the end of the day, when you look at that constable on the street, you realize that. Or from the police station, like, they will do duty at night also. If the call comes, they'll have to report in the morning also. And more than the time they spend with their families, they spend at the police station. So that is true for all police officers. So the training tries to teach you to work through that much work stress and fatigue, and to be able to make sound judgment in spite of all of it. It's a really fantastic training, though, and I'm very grateful that I got to experience it.
And you are from Mumbai, and you are now going to take charge in Delhi. So, but Delhi is not new to you. You already worked there as a station house officer.
yeah.
Tell us more on that.
Station house officer is it really changed my life. There's really nothing more I can say. The reason it changed my life is because as a lawyer, I always we are raised to always be a little critical of the police. We're always on the other end, and I did a lot of cases also against the police, and I would think, oh my god, these police personnel, they're like this XYZ. And then suddenly I was placed in the position of that person, right? Because even as a lawyer, ultimately you deal with the SHO. And then I realized it's no easy task being an SHO. It is so difficult. And it's not just there, right? Like, even here, anywhere you go, I see SHOs and they're working day in and day out. And I had a newfound respect for the police because of my SHO-ship. And now I have a lot of respect for SHOs. Like, I think SHO and I'm like, okay, this person has been working so hard, they probably don't remember the last time they met their family or attended, a family gathering or a birthday, something like that. So a lot of respect to them.
Is Puducherry close to your heart?
I don't think that's a question that needs to be asked also. And I'll tell you why. Like you said, Delhi was not unfamiliar for me because of I did a lot of my internships in Delhi while in law school as well. I had a couple of matters in the Supreme Court also. Bombay is where I was raised. Um, But Puducherry was the first place I really went out of my comfort zone. It's like I felt like a young girl who went there and found her wings and learned how to fly. So that's what Puducherry has been for me. I feel like I found my own identity there. I could develop my working style. And it was very difficult, coming from Bombay, our world view is very different, and then coming to Pondicherry and Tamil Nadu, it's a completely different way of living your life, looking at things. It's a different culture, and it took a while to adjust, but I could not have imagined that people can be so warm, so affectionate, and so kind. And I don't say that lightly. And that is why Puducherry will always have such a special place in my heart.
You are an active officer. What keeps you going?
Just some words, people say, why do you like, but I really feel it's just a few words: public interest, justice, people, rule of law, constitution. Those are the things that drive me, and particularly public interest and justice. I feel that justice is very important. It keeps the balance in society. And I think we all have a responsibility towards justice, not just police officers. But that's always been a driving passion for me.
So, in your busy time, how do you manage your time for yourself, family, and friends in your busy schedule?
It's very difficult, honestly. As in, it's very difficult once you get into work. It's very hard to get out of it because I think in government service, there's always a lot of demands on your time. At the end of the day, you have to, but you have to, is what I've learned the hard way, that if you don't take out time for your friends and your family, then I don't think you remain very empathetic and sensitive, which is really important in this job. So I think if you can value your personal life, it's a good thing for your professional life also. It allows you to be humane. So now I try to make an effort that sometimes, even if I get a very short leave or something, I try not to miss the important events if, my duty allows.
Your tips for the women out there, how can they develop a courage and follow their dreams?
I think that women are goddesses and they have so much potential that continues to be untapped. And that is why what I would really encourage women is to unapologetically be themselves and pursue their dreams. And sometimes unapologetic being the key word means that you will have to take stands in life. Sometimes you will have to take big risks, but it'll be worth it, is all I will say. Because at the end of the day, it's not about man and woman, it's about we are all human beings here and we have this opportunity to live our greatest possible lives. And we owe duty to, it's our duty towards creation to be able to do that. So that's why I would tell women, like, be unapologetic, be fearless, and just chase your dreams.
That's nice. What's your message to the parents out there regarding their children's upbringing and education?
Parents are so fundamental in the way a child is raised, and I think it is their guidance which ultimately will shape the path a child takes. I would request, because we deal with so many cases in the police station, um, I've seen so many children, for instance, who are in the drug trade, underage children. They will not have a father. Their mother's busy trying to get some income to the family. Then they go into all of this. So, one thing I will say is give your children time and attention, unconditional love, but also don't force things on them. I think many times we as adults make mistakes where we look at other people or other people's children and then we'll try to impose that on our children. But I think what is always better, and this is something I learned from Puducherry, because they have so much of free upbringing of children, right? Less rules, Auroville and the ashram and things like that, that I learned you should learn to accept your child for who they are and develop their God given traits.
The people of Puducherry will miss you so much. So, what's your message to them and the people of Tamil Nadu?
I have no message for them. All I can say is Nandri, because I have not received this much love in my life. I could not have imagined it was possible. And I am just grateful. There's nothing more. For them, I will only say thank you, thank you, thank you.
It was such a pleasure interacting with you, Miss Isha Singh. Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank
you
you so
so
much.
much,
Thank you.
Anji.